So thanks so much again for joining us tonight. This is our first candidate forum in the 2022 election cycle. For those of you who don't know, Secular AZ is a 501c3 organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state. And we've been doing it for well over a decade. I'm excited to be hosting our first in a series of candidate forums for school board candidates in Arizona. As I said earlier, we will be expanding that to our legislative races. And we decided to begin hosting this type of event because our members care very much about the growing threat of Christian nationalism in our state and country, and of course, about the separation of church and state. And we're seeing how this political ideology is threatening our local school boards. And our local school boards are the heart of our democracy. So I know we may have a lot of newcomers here, and if our mission of the separation of church and state is something that you will care deeply about, we ask you to consider becoming a member of our organization. It's only $30 a year, perhaps even becoming a monthly donor or volunteering for the various events that we have throughout the state. As a matter of fact, this weekend we are going to be at the Rainbows Festival at Heritage Square Park in Central Phoenix, or Heritage Square in Central Phoenix. So if you'd like to come and join us and talk to folks about why our mission is so important, we'd love to have you. Or you could maybe do all three: member, monthly donor, volunteer. We need all the help we can get. So tonight we're going to be speaking with candidates for the Chandler Unified School Board. And according to public records, there are 7 candidates that are running for 2 seats in Chandler. And as many of you are aware, Chandler Unified has been highlighted in local and national news outlets because of events that are happening at the school board meetings. So I wanted to acknowledge the other 4 candidates that are running in Chandler Unified. Again, we are a nonpartisan organization. This is more about getting your ideas out and sharing your vision for the district. And we will not be endorsing anybody. Both Charlotte Goya and Kurt Roars were both unable to make it tonight, and we did not receive responses from Marilou Estes or Michael Flores. Now, we do have a few candidates tonight who were able to make it, and so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we have Patti Serrano on the ballot. I believe you're going to be Martha, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Patti. We have Crystal Markowsky, and we have Matt Young. So the way that this is going to work tonight, I have several questions, and I'll try to get through as many as I possibly can. We will allow each candidate to have 2 minutes to respond to each question. And the way that I'll do it is just kind of, I'm going to be starting with Crystal. We're just going to go alphabetically. So Crystal will be first, Patti will be second, Matt will be third, and then the next time around, it will be Patti first, Matt second, and Crystal third. So we will have an opportunity for folks to add their questions to the chat. If you have a question that you'd like to ask our candidates, by all means, put it in the chat. And Lindsay, my development director, who is fantastic and who makes all the magic happen, will make that happen as well. There she is. She's like, please don't make me go on camera. So without any further ado, I'm, like I said, going to go alphabetically. And so Crystal Markowsky, please introduce yourself for the folks in our organization.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Secular Arizona, for having all of us here today. My name is Crystal Markowsky, and I am running for the Chandler School Board. I am a mom. I have 3 children, all of whom attend public schools. I am a leader from a business perspective. I'm a director in a global Fortune 500 company, and I'm a public school advocate. I'm a product of public schools. I grew up in New Mexico and chose to come to Arizona in 2001. I've lived here ever since. We chose Chandler Unified as our school district. My 2 youngest kids attend Tarwater and are members of the DLI Mandarin Immersion program. And I began really paying attention to the school board during COVID and was really unhappy with how I felt that things were going. And so, paying attention, meeting folks and talking, and decided I would really like to put my name in the hat for this role. I think that I can be a voice of reason and really bring kind of my perspective and my expertise to make sure that our students and our teachers and our community are really supported and benefit by having a strong public school system. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much, Crystal. We are going to go ahead and move on then to Patti. So Patti, if you'd like to introduce yourself. And again, I forgot, so Lindsay is keeping time and she'll give the signal to let you know when you're running out of time. Sorry. Go ahead,
Okay.
Patti.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's so good to be with you all. Thanks for showing up. Jeannie touched on this, but you're giving up some of your Tuesday evening here with us, and that shows you're here because you care about our public schools, just like we do. So I want to say thank you to everybody joining tonight, and a special thank you, shining a special light on Secular AZ for doing the work of hosting tonight. It's not so easy, and having CUSD be your first school board forum this year. Again, my name is Patti Serrano, or Patti Serrano is okay, and I am running for our Chandler Unified School District Governing Board. I'd like to share that this decision is very personal for me. I happen to be a product of our CUSD schools. I graduated from our Hamilton High School in 2001. I believe it was the 4th graduating class at the time. And for the past over 8 years, I'm very proud to share that I've been a district mom since my child started kindergarten. I actually moved back to Chandler due to the school system, knowing that I wanted to continue that family legacy that we carry in my family in our CUSD schools. I am rooted in Chandler community. We live in Colonia Precinct. I have my K-8 school up the street that I walked my child to, and he is now in junior high at, I don't know if you can see this, at ACP, Arizona College Prep Junior High. I also happen to hold a very strong solidarity with our district teachers. It so happens that my sister has been an educator in CUSD for over 20 years, and not a day goes by that I don't think of our educators in the district that we entrust our kids to every day. By day, I work in academic research at one of our state universities, public state universities, focused on research and education, advancing children's education. And I'm happy to be with you and share a little bit more about my story. Thank you.
All right, my apologies for that. I am trying to close some of my tabs because my computer's going very slow. It's a problem that I struggle with quite frequently. Anyway, so let's go ahead and move on to our next candidate, and that will be Matt Young. Matt, welcome, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks so much, Jean. Yeah, my name is Matt Young, and thanks so much everybody for logging on, and thanks to Patti and Crystal for hopping on as well. I'm a scientist by training. I did my PhD in neuroscience at Penn after I left Arizona after living here for 21 years, went to ASU, and then kind of started my journey around the country for my academic career, pursuing sort of a scientific career. Ultimately kind of backtracked away from that, but throughout sort of that period of time, I was very involved in public education, whether it was in Philly, volunteering in sort of West Philly, inner cities, trying to help out with science education there, or in Atlanta, teaching at the college level, whether it was at Emory or at Spelman College. And when we had our first child, we decided to move back to Arizona to raise him here, to be closer to family and also take advantage of the really great schools out here in Chandler. So with my oldest son starting school, kindergarten at Knox in July, and sort of hearing about and seeing some of the things going on with the public schools and the public school system that he would be entering, I felt it incumbent upon me to kind of step in and bring that scientific perspective to the school board, a perspective that is about listening, gathering evidence, coming up with creative solutions. And I've said it 100 times, there are 40,000 kids in this district who come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic status, have different values in their family. This isn't a one-size-fits-all situation, and you need to be able to listen and work together. And I think that I'm well qualified to do that. And I'm really excited to run and hopefully run with some really exciting and thoughtful people as well. So thanks.
That's 2 minutes.
Thanks so much, Lindsay, for keeping us on point there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open it up, and this may be a bit of a repeat because some of you talked about it. So the first question, and this one will go to Crystal, is at what point did you decide to run for a spot on the CUSD governing board, and what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure?
So I think the decision was really made October, November last year, and had been kind of leading up, and in fact had a discussion in September or so when our kids went back to school, in person. And we had, kind of made this really hard decision around, do we keep our kids at home and do COA, or do we send them in? And ultimately we decided that really the only risk that we had, kind of from our family, from a COVID perspective, was our kids going to school. We had really been able and fortunate enough that we can work from home, et cetera. And so we decided we would do that. But as those meetings went on and the votes started happening around masks or no masks and kind of the wishy-washy, as I was dropping my kids off to school one day, I kind of joked to one of our teachers and administrators at our school and said, I don't know, am I going to have to run for school board because I just don't like the way this is going? And, they supported me at that point in time, but it really was just kind of a pie in the sky idea. But as I began, watching the decisions that happened, and seeing even, the new folks and struggling with even the Roberts rules, how do you make a motion? And I thought, oh my goodness, I can totally do this better. And so in November of last year, I just said, well, I guess I think I'm really going to do this, and started gathering up some of, friends and supporters and people who I knew were like-minded, and said, hey, how do I do this? I have no idea what this really entails and how to do it. But that was when I started gathering up my support, and then ultimately led to filing the paperwork in March. I think what I said, just to reiterate, what I really hope that I can do is bring the perspective as a mom, as a community member.
2 minutes.
Really, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll finish that up later. Thanks, Lindsay.
No problem, Crystal. And thank you again, Lindsay, for keeping us all on track. So next we are going to hear from Patti.
Mute here. Let's see, when did I decide to run? Truth be told, I had been asked to run for our school board in the past, and I always said no. Then board member Love came along, and that has been a celebration in my household, I know, amongst many others in our district. We felt that we had representation that we had been lacking on that board. And learning that board member Love would be exiting the board this fall and result in a board that was not reflective of our community pretty much motivated me to do something, whether it was supporting another candidate that would be a better voice and more representational, or running myself. The fact is that over half of our students in Chandler Unified identify as minority, and board member Love is the only minority board member who will be exiting the board. I think it is extremely important that we fill that seat with somebody that is accessible to our community. And I know that electing the first Latina to Chandler Unified School District would mean progress. Electing a Serrano to the board would mean progress. Electing a child of immigrants, first generation American, would mean progress. And electing a Spanish speaker that can connect with many of our community members would mean progress.
Great. So thank you so much. And thank you. So I asked Lindsay to actually put in the chat. If you have your chat open, I suggest you do. She'll give you a quick little 30-second warning, but that was right on time. Thank you so much. Next, let's go ahead to Matt. And again, that question is, tell us about what was the time when you decided to run for a spot and what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to Crystal and Patti. Those are really inspiring stories. And I think they touch on a lot of the motivation for myself as well. I may perhaps be a little bit newer or more recent to the game in terms of making that decision. Like I said, my son is starting kindergarten, and in doing my due diligence to kind of understand the world that he's entering, I looked at what the school board landscape was. I knew that Lindsay Love was departing her seat, and I looked at who the people were who were most visibly running or throwing their hat into the ring for that seat, and also the other seat as well. And I was a little disappointed by the three most visible individuals. I'll tell you, it wasn't Crystal or Patti. I actually couldn't really gather a whole lot of information about either of them, but I was a little concerned that those were, the three most visible people who were trying to run for those two seats. And so, I really felt compelled, and I felt that I had to kind of do my part to make sure that we're bringing somebody into that seat that does do a lot of things that you all are talking about, whether it's diversifying the board or having a parent who's very involved and very passionate. So that was kind of it. And I guess I didn't give you the timing, but that was in February.
Great, thank you so much. All right, let's move on to the next question. So, we've heard a lot about Chandler Unified School District, like I said, not just at the local level, but also at the national level. And I'm sure that our audience members have their own idea about the challenges that are facing your district, but I would love to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest challenge that's facing your district, and how do you plan to address it? So with this one, we are going to go ahead and start with Patti.
Thank you, Jeannie. So I would start by saying a very simple verb, and that's listening. I have been for years involved with CUSD, attending the school board meetings, emailing our board members, seeing how policy from the state is interpreted on the local district level, and hearing from our community, not just at the school board meetings, but what I like to say out in the community, at your local picnics within the district, at sports events after school. And what I seem to feel I hear from all entities, whether it be educators, other parents, is that we don't feel listened enough. I do come also from a research science background. I'm super data driven, and I will be honest, I would love to see some accountability with some better surveying of our community. I know we've put some out there, I've participated in them myself, and it's quite frustrating to not see a feedback loop with what's done, with what information is collected regarding our concerns. And as far as listening, I really need to I intend to bring in our underrepresented community members, whether it be a language barrier, a transportation barrier, an internet barrier for accessing our school board meetings that are streamed live on YouTube. These are all questions that we should be thinking about as far as accessibility and who we get to listen to. I will be hosting Cafecitos with Patti, or Conchas en Café, which would be open community meetings at our local parks to talk to me a little bit as a school board member in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Patti. Same question now goes to Matt.
Yeah, I think that there are two kind of big issues. I mean, there are many big issues, but the two that really come to mind for me are, some of the data recently around retention of students and, keeping students within the Chandler Unified School District, which has been problematic over the last couple of years. So, making decisions from a people and curriculum perspective to motivate people to want to stay within the district and keep those dollars in the CUSD public schools as opposed to going kind of somewhere else. I think that's a huge issue. And then I also think there seems to be this odd culture war where we're sort of like pitting teachers against parents, against students, when we should all really be working together. And I don't know how that got lost in the last year. Maybe it was COVID, but I really think we need to kind of get back to really, like Patti said, listening to each other and really understanding that it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the kids, and it's about making sure that they're safe, high achieving, and they're given an environment where they can thrive and learn, not just school stuff, but also life skills at the same time. You know, I mean, all of these arguments are going on in the adult world. How are we preparing these kids to live in that world? I'm appalled that we're not talking about that more and taking action to really make a difference in the lives of these kids. So those are the two issues that really kind of pop out to me.
Thank you so much, Matt. All right, and now we'll send it back to Crystal.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit of a broken record, right? Like it's listening and doing the right things with our limited resources. So in my day job, I am an internal auditor, and my job is to go in and listen to multiple aspects of our business and try to make some really kind of hard decisions and hard calls on whether folks are doing the right things and if we're doing them the right way for our company and our customers. And so, to both Patti and Matt's point, listening is crucial. We all only have one perspective, and it's important that we listen to the other perspectives around us so that we can make use of those very limited dollars that we have from the state allocated to us. We don't get a lot. And the state is doing all it can at the legislative level, unfortunately, to funnel even more and more of those funds away to for-profit schools rather than our public schools. And so I think it's important to make decisions for the use of those limited funds to ensure that our kids have safe environments, that there are equitable environments, and that all of our students, whether they go to a school like my kids, where the PTO can, kind of raise money at the drop of a dime, or a Title I school, and making sure that all of our kids have the opportunity to be successful students and graduates, and therefore community members.
Thank you so much, Crystal. All right, let's go to the next question. I may jump around a little bit. There's a lot of conversation right now. I know that Representative Pollack, and thank you for your service, Representative Pollack, she's here on this call today. We're seeing a lot of talk down at the state capitol about parental rights. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Over the last few years, Chandler Unified has made national news because of their board meetings, and there's been a lot of mention about parental rights. So in your opinion, what role should parents play in the education of their children? And this one then will be going to Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, gosh, this is such an interesting cultural question, right? And it's like when I was growing up, I never thought that I would have to think about this. I mean, you're a kid, you think the adults kind of have all the answers, and they kind of know what to do. I find myself thinking on both sides of the coin here. I can understand as a parent, wanting to know what's going on in classrooms, wanting to know what my kid is teaching. But I also, on the other side, it's also my responsibility as well to handle that in my own home. So I tend to think it's the minority of people who maybe have difficulty perhaps handling those more challenging issues within their home, who then want to legislate it and change everything for everybody else. Now, that doesn't mean that we write those people off and we write those concerns off, but I don't think you can let a vocal minority drive the conversation or own the conversation. So we've kind of beating the drum again, but we have to listen and come up with creative solutions to kind of help everybody meet in the middle. But to say that there's a simple answer to this, or there's a simple solution, I think is pretty myopic. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm kind of struggling with the sociology of it myself.
Thanks so much, Matt. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Crystal. Same question. What role should parents play in the education of their children in public schools?
Well, we'd like to think that parents, are there and support their kids and know what the kids are doing and what they're learning. And oh my goodness, is it frankly overwhelming when we had our first child in our kindergarten, how many things there were for us to know and do, and those opportunities. And so I guess what I find interesting through this whole rhetoric and, kind of the social situation that parents' rights has become is we have so many opportunities to be involved in our kids' education already. We have curriculum nights, and we have so many, emails and class dojo and communication methods and the grade portals and all of the things. If you are a parent who wants to be involved in your child's education, you have every opportunity to be. It's exceedingly transparent. And if you want to put the time in and that's something that's important to you, which I think should be important to you because we want to make sure that our kids, have good opportunities and we're involved in ensuring they do the homework and whatnot. Those opportunities are already there. So this kind of madness that's going on in the legislature to, claim parents' rights and think that we need to watch what our teachers are doing. No, our teachers are professionals. They are educated in this. I don't go into a school and question how a teacher is teaching because you know what? I'm not a teacher. The same way as I don't expect them to come in and question how I'm doing my job because they're not an auditor. Like, people have jobs and go into career paths for a reason, and we should respect and be mindful of the experience and expertise that they bring. So parents should be involved, but you know what? They already can be.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and then move on to Patti. Same question.
Definitely echoing what we've heard from Matt and Crystal. I have been a parent in the district public school in CUSD for over 8 years. I know firsthand parents play a primary role in the education of their kids when they enroll and register their child into their district and specific school. I actually view the registration process as a form of consent, handing your child over to their school day, basically. Beyond the consent at registration, we all know that we still sign off on syllabuses, we sign off on permission slips, we have Google Classroom, Infinity Campus, and all of these are things that our teachers somehow juggle in their busy day on top of caring for our children and teaching them. And I really feel that we need to honor and recognize the professionals in this case, which is our teachers, and the fact that we as parents hand over our children to these professional trained educators and staff for most of the week. Many of our kids between sports and school spend more time with these other adults that we entrust them into. So a shout out to our educators who already juggle so much, and we need not burden them with more. Our systems have been intact for centuries this way, and I fully support involving those directly involved, including our teachers, when it comes to these discussions.
Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to move on. So we've talked a little bit about parents, and I've heard you talk about trusting our educators. And I know that too, I subbed for a little bit before I took this position with Secular AZ. And, I feel like it's been a struggle. I've seen kids who have missed out on 2 years of the social interaction. And I know that I've heard a lot of teachers talk about student discipline and how students are almost in a way stunted because they missed out on a lot of that, the social stuff that goes on with school. So what approach do you believe schools and districts should have with regards to student discipline? And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to Crystal for this one, correct?
Man, student discipline, this is a hard topic, and I don't know that I have a fantastic or amazing answer, because I think that there's so many things that are going on behind the scenes that we don't understand about that are happening in students' lives that are impacting then their behaviors at school and discipline, and the needs to discipline them. So I think that our schools should be safe places. I think that I think all of our children should have the opportunity to be at school in environments where there is as little disruption as possible. And if there are other students who are causing that disruption, then those should be dealt with. But discipline to me is a really hard word that I just don't know that I have a good answer for, because there's so many things. And I think all of those things need to be taken into account, and the environment kids are in right now. It's very noisy. I'm sorry for that. So I don't know that I have a fabulous answer. I just think that our kids need safe places to go to school.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And Lindsay, if you could address that other issue that we have going on, that would be fantastic. So next after Crystal is going to be Patti. And again, the question is, what role or how should we handle student discipline in our public schools? How would you handle it?
Well, I'm also going to touch, I think what I was hearing a little bit about was the learning gap in the last 2 years, and the social part that kids have been missing out on. And this leans a little bit to this narrative that we've been hearing about returning to normal, that I've learned in my community discussions very recently. Last week, I learned that there is work being done with a subset of our community where our parents with children who happen to be BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color population, are starting to share comfort and sharing stories that they feel their kids are being targeted when it comes to discipline issues. My immediate reaction, hindsight, was a little bit of a personal experience I've had in the district with my child, who is also first generation Mexican American. And I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. And I realized, hey, I'm part of these numbers. So my response to that would be, where are the numbers? Can we pull reports on a school site basis, looking at referrals, suspensions, and discipline records, because all of it gets tracked, and break it down to ethnicities? That is something we can do. And I would love to have access to that kind of information and do something with it. We would need to create a formal response. I have a feeling that we know what we might find, but that would be a start. And I can speak saying that there are people in our community that feel that their kids are being targeted when it comes to discipline, and we really need to hear them and respond.
So same question goes to Matt.
Yeah, it's a good question. Patti brought up a great point about the diversity in schools, and I think actually Crystal brought it up as well, just that you have kids who have home issues and they're coming from different places. So it's really difficult to take a one-size-fits-all approach to discipline. But if I had to say like something sort of philosophically, I would say that discipline should have a mind toward teaching, right? These are schools. And this is a period in kids' lives where they're experimenting with behaviors. They're dealing with challenging environments, challenging emotions, challenging physical changes as well. And they're trying to figure out behavior as much as any of us still are, as clearly demonstrated by some people who made their way onto this call. So yeah, a mind toward teaching. And how do we do that? We tend to want to punish kids for doing the wrong thing, or snap them back in line. I can tell you, as somebody who was a bit of a troublemaker in my schooling days, that type of thing doesn't work. It only makes you want to act out and fight back more. So again, taking a rational and logical and thoughtful approach to these difficult questions. We're here to teach. That's what the schools are here for. So let's talk more about mental wellness, mental health, empowering these kids with teaching that enables them to deal with these difficult situations that they may be having at home, or these difficult situations that they may be having in school, or these challenging emotions that are coming up. why aren't we talking more about mental health? Because the kids are coming to the school board meetings and they're telling you there aren't enough school counselors, but nothing's being done. So let's stop talking about disciplining them and start talking about supporting them and teaching them.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Now this one I'm going to go ahead and throw out there, and this is for our members because like I said, we are an organization focused on the separation of church and state. This past year, we've had several complaints brought to our attention regarding religion in schools, religious iconography in schools. I mean, we have religious iconography at our state capitol right now. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to secularaz.org. But so our members really want to know what role, if any, should religion play in public schools? And this one is going to go, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's going to Patti.
Sure. So,
oh, wait, sorry. Wait, did I get that right? I think it's actually
I don't know. I
Matt's
haven't been
turn.
keeping track.
I'm sorry. Here I am with my own notes that I can't read. So I think that one actually goes right back to Matt.
Yeah, I mean, religion is a part of the human experience. I mean, it's as simple as that. It dates back to, primitive, indigenous, shamanic times. It is a part of who we are. The challenge is that you have over thousands, maybe millions of years, probably not millions, thousands, tens of thousands. There have been many branches off of that tree and many different belief systems to interpret this world. And that's where things get difficult, right? Because this person's feelings get hurt because this person over here is saying this, and this, it's just, again, becomes this big like tornado of people wanting to be represented and wanting to be heard. So it's definitely a challenging issue. So what's the role? There's a role for religious studies in schools. I went to a Catholic school. I was raised Jewish. I'm half Navajo. I come from a very diverse ethnic and religious background. And to tell you the truth, learning about those things has enabled me to more easily deal with diversity and different ways of thinking. So I'm not against the idea of talking about religion in schools, but when you start to talk about maybe offering preferential treatment to one type of religion, or maybe pushing religious ideals within the school system, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, there are laws that are in place to try to protect against that. And I think that in the school board capacity, we have to defer to the law. And so, I'm open to the discussions. I definitely think that there's value in talking about everybody's beliefs, but from an academic perspective. But again, from a decision and governing perspective, I think you have to kind of defer to the law.
Thank you for that, Matt. Next, we're going to go to Crystal. What role does religion have in our public schools?
Very little. I think that, I just had, because of the law that just passed about the moment of silence. And so we got a note from our second grade teacher, saying, hey, we're going to be doing this thing. And as a teacher, it isn't, I'm not allowed really to even, kind of talk about why we're doing this. So a moment of silence, but we know through seeing the folks at the legislature who brought this to bear that it really was looking for time to pray. And I think that if it were time to pray for everybody, that might be fine, but we don't do well here with kind of non-Judeo-Christian views. So I will tell you that I am a Christian. The Jesus who I believe in is a brown-skinned Middle Eastern man who loves everybody. And I think that we have a vast similarity in a lot of the world religions. And so, that history is important. And I think sharing from a cultural perspective, it's great that my kids at school, they're the Jewish the parents of Jewish kids come in, during Hanukkah and say, this is what we believe. And I'm certainly for, sharing and educating and people becoming aware. But that's that's an education. It's not religious being a part of the schools. People need to do that at their homes. And we have plenty of opportunity to do that in our homes and with our families.
Thanks so much for that, Crystal. And now we'll go ahead and ask the same question of Patti.
So it's definitely a difficult issue, I would say. However, because our public schools do operate under governmental law, I would have to say that there are decades of case law that address this in order to create what we strive to achieve with free, safe spaces and learning environments. I'm of the opinion that we should continue to adopt our constitutional mandate of separation of church and state. And this is coming from someone who does practice her religious faith. But I do know, understanding our policies, that we have our First Amendment rights that fall under political speech, religious freedom. And my understanding that is that as long as our act on school campuses of prayer, religious honoring whatever our religion may be, as long as it's not disruptive to the learning environment. And I want to be clear that by disruptive, that can mean many things. It could actually bring on feelings of discomfort for others, pressure. If you're at a school that is maybe predominantly practiced by one religion, but you're another. And I feel that our current rule of law allows for us to practice privately as is in a comfortable way. Coincidentally, and I'll try to be quick here, but my son literally came home from school yesterday and had this conversation with me, not knowing that I was doing this tonight. He's 13 and has other things going on in life, but he shared that he didn't realize how special last week was, not just for us celebrating Easter, but he heard from 2 different peers that were celebrating Passover and Ramadan. This happened at school where these peers were able to have that educational exchange
Patty,
with each other.
I apologize, Patty, but that is time.
Okay. And
we
it was
wanna make
beautiful.
It was great.
Thank you.
You so much. Okay, so next question is, can you provide an example of something that either the CUSD district administration or the governing board has done or not done during the past year that you feel warranted a more meaningful or critical response from the board? So let me reword that. Can you provide an example of something that CUSD district administration has done or not done during the past year that you feel warranted a more meaningful or critical response from the board? And let's see. So this time we are going to be going back to the beginning, and that's Crystal. So Crystal, could you share your thoughts about that?
So something where the board could have done more or better activity.
Yes.
I am going to go with the response to the anti-Semitic comments around vaccines and Jewish people. I think that the board really tries to, and the rules require that they, may not respond directly to comments, but they have that are made by the public, but they have the opportunity to respond not just after the meeting, kind of immediately following, which actually just happened the last time around when some of the speakers were kind of admonished for being so negative all the time. So it was a direct response immediately following the public comments, but also afterwards. And so in this instance, when the comments were made that were very inappropriate, the response was kind of just, hey, we don't say things like that, and just not direct and not naming it. And then the letter that went out afterwards from the district to the community members and the folks who are in the district, was still kind of just lukewarm about, hey, we really aren't happy with the way parents are commenting at these meetings, but there's not a lot we can do about it. And I really wish they would have much more strongly admonished and said, we are not willing to accept anti-Semitic comments in this environment.
Thank you for that. And I just want to, because in my spare time, I sometimes go and watch the live feed of school board meetings. So for folks who don't know what Crystal is referencing, there were some comments made that were very anti-Semitic in nature. And the response from the board was kind of like, well, if it's not on the agenda, you can't talk about it, but there was no immediate admonishment of the comments that were made. So if you're not familiar with what's been happening in Chandler Unified, that's what's being referenced. So the same question now will go to Patti. So Patti, what's something that you feel that CUSD district administration has done or not done, and you feel like it could have gotten a more meaningful response from the board?
So I'll have to piggyback on the anti-Semitic remark incident that Crystal used, just because it was so poorly handled. It was truly a form of hate speech. Words matter. And if we're trying to teach that in our schools, we absolutely have to show that in our district meetings by our behavior. That person should have been immediately removed, because that type of hate speech does not belong in a public school board meeting. And what happens when it's not immediately addressed, and going back to Matt mentioning discipline being a learning opportunity, it can foster and embolden future similar behavior. And for kids who are aware of it, they may think it's okay to bring that onto school campuses. So it doesn't foster a safe learning environment if our leadership and adults at the district act this way. And that is actually reflective of other past incidents that I just want to bring up for people who follow CUSD history. In 2019 and 2018, I had to join our Black community at the school board meeting in solidarity because of racist attacks that were occurring at our school campuses. And one of them was not on campus, so nothing was immediately addressed. And again, I think that leads to a path of opening up for okaying other similar behavior, and these things really should be addressed in the immediate.
Thank you for that. Same question goes to you, Matt.
Yeah, that's the anti-Semitic comments that definitely jumps to mind pretty quickly, and just that it wasn't more admonished. I mean, I'm Jewish, so I took particular offense to that. But I'm going to go somewhere else, and I'm going to try to shoehorn two things in here. One, I think there's a huge missed opportunity on mental health for kids in these schools. Like I said, I've been to school board meetings where kids come in and they say, we need more support, we need more services, we need more counselors, we need more education on mental health. School board listens, nothing happens. So, gosh, the last time that I heard that was in 2018, and who would have thought, just a couple of years later, we would be in the midst of COVID, and these kids would be facing some of the greatest challenges to their mental health in the school system that we've kind of ever experienced. So I think that's a huge missed opportunity, and continues to be. And the other, more broadly, is data gathering. We make a lot of decisions on the governing board. A lot of people come in and sell stuff to the district, but there's never any system for evaluation of those projects set up. So how are we supposed to learn how to make better decisions and how to learn about the impact of the decisions we're making if we're not closing the loop on those decisions? And again, I think there are teaching opportunities there as well. Why not, if we're bringing in laptops for kindergarten or something, there should be an evidence gathering strategy or an evaluation strategy built into that. And then why not involve teachers and 10th grade students in that project, partner them with a college graduate student, and have them over those 2 years, do a project so that they leave, high school with a publication or a white paper or something. We have to think creatively, one, to hold ourselves accountable, and two, to continue to press the issue on making this a high achieving district, because again, we continue to lose kids to schools that are thinking bigger and thinking more directed, and we need to keep challenging ourselves.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm torn because I have 2 or 3 more questions left. But I'm trying to think of my members because we're doing this for our members. So, and we're very plugged into what's happening at the legislative session this year. And we've seen a whole bunch of stuff happen at the legislative session. So this past legislative session, we saw a number of education and school focused bills become law. Some of them are just waiting in the wings. So hopefully you're paying attention to the legislative session, and I'm sure that you are, but which bill gave you the most concern, and how will you handle its implementation as a board member? Because I know this has already actually come up for the Chandler Unified School District. So we ended with Matt. I believe that means that we're starting with Patti this time. Boy, I should have done a better job. So Patti, if you could answer that question. This past legislative session saw a number of education and school focused bills become law, with many others waiting in the wings. So which bill gave you the most concern, and how will you handle its implementation as a board member?
That's an overwhelming question for people who follow our sad policy. So, gosh, funding is huge, but more recently, I will say the implementation of the KB policy and how it was interpreted in my specific school district in comparison, just like in many other examples, comparing that to other school districts was really disheartening. The passing of the KB bill was basically misinterpreted within district administration. That's the honest truth. And I think we saw that on display at a February board meeting that I was at. And it caused panic, confusion, fear. I encourage everybody to go back to that school board meeting to listen to our LGBTQ. Sorry, I got a little emotional. But if you can visit that meeting to hear the pain and what we're doing to our kids in our schools and our educators who support these kids. There's another bill around the corner attacking our educators who are safe havens for our LGBTQ community. And again, this all goes back to our kids being able to identify with, trust, and have a safe learning environment where they can celebrate our differences, whether or not we have LGBTQ acclaimed authors on our agendas, whether we're celebrating an LGBTQ artist and learning from them, our BIPOC community. There's just such a fear of the other. And the way these bills are passed down, but our boards are responsible for interpreting and implementing the policy, is something that we really need to pay attention to and do better. And I know I have colleagues in other school districts that I'm really looking forward to learning from on how we can better interpret policy in CUSD.
And that's time. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Your passion is palpable. So thank you for that. So after Crystal, we're going to go ahead and go to Patti. Same question. Bills coming out of legislature, and how would you handle those bills?
I
think it's actually my turn.
Yep.
Because Patti just went. That's
Thank
okay.
you so much. Okay, so let's go to Matt. I'm going to get this right eventually. Yeah.
No problem. Maybe this isn't so much legislative, but just all the depressing news around Prop 208 and the fact that we don't want to do what it takes to support our teachers. Everybody, teachers are the foundation of our school system. And again, I'm going to keep bringing it up. They just filed a report about how they can't keep students. Well, geez, if you're not paying the teachers, how are you supposed to keep the students? How are the teachers supposed to have the time to plan lessons and think creatively and really do their best when they're, having to scrape by on a living that just doesn't seem to match the work that they put in. Everybody is so thrilled about their property values going up. All right, great, my house went up, this amount, awesome. What about the teacher who needs to buy a house? What about the teacher who needs to rent an apartment? Great, all that's going up, that's awesome, but let's not throw a little bit of that to the teachers so that we can keep them in our communities. And you just have to wonder, how does that make you feel as an employee, as a teacher? Show up every day, don't complain, send out permission slips to talk about what you want to teach, post your curriculum, do all this stuff. But God forbid, I know this is secular AZ, but God forbid, we give them the compensation to take care of them. I think that is ludicrous. And I think it will continue to be a huge issue until we start to support these people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Oops, there's a fly that's like bothering me right now. All right, now we will go ahead and go to Crystal.
Thank you. So I don't want to tear up like Patti did, but so I think along those very same lines, some of the things that scare me the most, in particular with how it's already making my kids feel, are some of the books or some of the laws proposed around banning books. And really it's around, approving every single book that it purchases and making this list and, creating this burden, but also going through, the library and looking at books. And it is so important that our kids have access to materials that is that are representative of their experience and their lives, and also that are different, right? Like it is my kids who are being raised in a home with a mom and a dad should also be able to read stories about families who have two moms or two dads, or split their time between families. We all need to understand the experiences that everybody faces so that we can become kinder and more empathetic and complete people. And so I know that my daughter, who is an avid reader, is already really freaked out about what books she might not be able to read. And I think that the heart of those decisions are around making sure that we don't have, we don't get to celebrate differences amongst our families. And so I think those are the ones I'm going to say in addition to what's already been discussed.
Thank you for that. So I had the schedule set so that at 7 o'clock we could start opening up to audience questions. And let me just scroll back a little bit. I have a question right now from Kim. And Kim asks, why do you feel that Chandler Unified School District had so many issues regarding the updated KB policy? And so this, I believe, and hopefully you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the KB policy, my understanding is that it was preemptive about any mention of sex or sexuality or I mean, anatomy, it seems. I think that's what it is. And I see Crystal shaking her head. Yes. So I think that's where I'm at. So why do you feel that CUSD had so many issues regarding the updated KB policy where other districts have not seen this much confusion or fear? That's part one of the question, because this is a meaty question. And what have you communicated to the board and or administration regarding the KB policy and the subsequent mishandling of it on their end, resulting in children showing up in tears? And Patti, I see you have your hand raised. Can you clarify maybe KB for the rest of us lay people who might not know?
Well, we didn't see it. I jumped on communicating with other school board members. I actually learned about the KB policy through teachers within the district who were sent emails, and depending on the school site and its leadership, basically it felt like, and I can only speak from what I know in my perspective, but it felt like the policy was passed down from the state as written and distributed to site leaders. Those site leaders were, to no fault of their own, left on their own to interpret what the KB policy was. So that means that we had different communication going out to the teachers per site. At one particular school, I have it on good faith, and there's the email documented. The leadership at that school explained, hey, you need to get permission before you do anything that could be interpreted as being work from an LGBT community example identified person. That's what resulted in all of the public comments that came to board in February, because our educators actually received a letter stating you need to start getting permission to teach these regular historic writings. And this really impacted our English department. There was a wonderful statement made about the artists that are displayed at the time in February at the board, because some of them were of the LGBTQ community. So I would say that it was an administrative fault. And what was done is what we witnessed. People reacted and came to board to say that this was ridiculous. And from my perspective, what is distinct on the interpretation is, wow, CUSD, it feels, is prioritizing the dissemination of these policies, prioritizing this type of work instead of properly funding our schools, supporting our educators who are already overburdened, and listening to our community to be better. We're prioritizing putting out preemptive policy where other districts hadn't even entertained this policy. And I, again, did communicate with several other districts, and they hadn't even put it on the agenda or met as a board related to it. So it was very
Thank you.
disappointing.
Thank you so much. And I apologize. And so I appreciate you for being able to the KBC and also your answer. So Matt, I apologize for because you should have been next. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go next, Matt.
And the question is, why are there so many issues and why haven't we seen them in other districts? That's the question.
So I'm sorry, my internet was a little bit wonky there for a second. So let me go back and get the question so that you have the full question. The question says, why do you feel that CUSD had so many issues regarding the updated KB policy where other districts have not seen this much confusion or fear? What have you communicated to the board and or administration regarding the KB policy and the subsequent mishandling of it on their end, resulting in children showing up in tears?
Yeah, I mean, why is Chandler unique in doing this? I don't have a good answer for that. And to be frank, I've not communicated anything to the board or administration. Like I said, my son will be starting kindergarten in July, and I would hope that this was not a huge issue for him as a 5-year-old, but who knows? But, thinking about the future, it's incumbent. I mean, the board can do many things, but I mean, it's incumbent upon the people who are in place to bring these things home. I mean, it's incumbent on, the superintendent, frankly, to kind of stand up and, take accountability for this stuff, both for mistakes that were made, but also for streamlining things. The board sits under the superintendent, but by the same token, superintendent is accountable to us all. So that's kind of, when I think about what needs to be communicated, I'd like to hear more from him about the issue.
Great. Okay, so back to Crystal. The same question goes to you about the KB policy. If you need me to reread it, I'd be happy to do so.
I think I'll be okay. We'll try. Thank you. Why do I think Chandler has so many challenges with it? Because there are just some very, frankly, gross voices who are big voices around here right now. And I think the interpretation of it and the intent around, having permission and making sure that, your kids the parents are aware of, what types of, sexual education content is being delivered to our kids. I think that it's interpreted way too broadly and frankly in truly like a sexualized way. And so that is why Chandler made a mess of it, I think, is because they were listening to these voices and the board was not prepared enough to, to stand up to those voices and do the right things and say, no, this is actually what the policy is focused on, and interpret it in that way. It's disappointing that, even I think it first came up in, December from a kind of discussion and ratification topic. The policies are out there, they're available to us as the public, they're clearly available to the board members, and, to hear the board members be unprepared to discuss them and, well, I don't know where to find the policies and those things. I think something that, aside from the content and truly the outcome, which are egregious, but the fact that our board members are not behaving in kind of a professional manner and being prepared and taking this job seriously, as a board member, was very disappointing, as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I see that Kim posted, I just clicked on the link about, this is what I remember about this, is that, the teachers were kind of inundating parents with permission slips with the fact that they might have a culinary class and might have to use the word breast because they were cooking chicken breasts. So, and again, this is something that's important to our members, because when we do start talking about sex and sexuality, so oftentimes the motivation does come from this threat, this real threat that we have of Christian nationalism. And so our entire goal as an organization is to make sure that one religious ideology or belief doesn't infiltrate our public schools, because as all of you have stated earlier in this conversation, that's really not the place of our public schools. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there again. Please, if you do have any questions that are specific for our members, put them out there. Thankfully, I do have some other questions that I have already come up with. So this is a good one. I really like this one because I'm very passionate about the idea of testing, or the lack thereof, really. So what role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies? And so I believe that I probably should have gone with Patti, but since Patti went first the last time, I'm going to go ahead and switch it up, and I'm going to have Matt go this time. So what role do you think, Matt, should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some kind of standard. I also think that there should be some sort of standardized evaluation for teachers as well. I mean, we're holding the kids accountable. We also have to hold teachers accountable for how they're performing in schools as well. And, if we're not, shame on us. But I think that standardized testing for students is part of a more comprehensive approach and data-driven approach to evaluating, school performance and teacher performance. A standardized test can only tell you so much, because kids have different learning styles, they have different abilities, they come from different backgrounds. You have to take the whole picture into account. Graduation rates, what are their involvement in extracurricular activities? What are the students saying, about their experiences in school? And I think that the district is beginning to do kind of a good job of that, looking at the Journey 2025 plan, where they are talking to students about, how do you feel about your school? How safe do you feel in schools? How represented do you feel? There's still a lot of work to be done on that, but it is good to see that, we're thinking more holistically and not just simply, creating this standardized method, because it just doesn't work for every kid. I come from a family with kids with, siblings who have learning disabilities. My mother-in-law runs a school for kids with different learning abilities. You have to think beyond just a standardized approach. So it's just part of a bigger picture. And then also, I'll just say that I have to go. I got to go help put my kids to bed. But I've really enjoyed having this conversation, and I wish I could hang out longer, but I have to help. So thanks so much. And Patti and Crystal, you guys are awesome. It's been so great chatting with you, and thanks everybody.
Thanks for your time, Matt. We appreciate you for stepping up and running. It's a dirty, thankless job. It doesn't pay anything. So thank you so much for being here tonight. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off then to, hold on, I'm going to get this right this time, I think. Crystal, you're going to be next with the same question, standardized testing and its role in programming and policies.
Well, last week we had standardized testing, and that's a lot of fun at a house with kids who, get really anxious about it and are worked up. And while there should be, some measures that we can look at, I think a little bit to Matt's point, there needs to be much more well-rounded features of that. We know that standardized testing there's systemic bias built into it, and that kids from all backgrounds do not fare as well, no matter how well they're taught, whether they're taught directly to pass the test, which frankly isn't helpful in giving a good education to anybody. But it's not a fair playing field, right? Standardized testing as a whole. And so having that as such a driver for school performance and teacher pay, when so many of the things that influence the performance are outside of the control and cannot be captured in standardized tests, I don't think that is a fair and accurate way to gather that. What I did learn, and is one of the scariest and grossest things I think that I have ever learned, is that we predict the level of beds that we're going to have in prisons based on third grade standardized test results, because the measure of how well kids can read and perform at third grade is predictive to how many folks are going to be in prison later on. And I think maybe instead of worrying so much about how many prison beds we're going to find, we should figure out ways to really help those kids and educate them, instead of just thinking they're gone, they're just going to be in prison in a few years and we'll be fine because we have the money for our profit prisons to do that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was, yeah. Boy, is that depressing. I always joke around and say I'm always the life of the party because I bring up stuff like, the school to prison pipeline with people and they're like, you're being hyperbolic, but yeah. Okay, so same question goes to you, Patti.
Piggybacking definitely off what Crystal shared, I agree with everything she said. And I would just add that standardized testing goes back to this idea of normalcy that I commented on earlier. I come from an evidence-based background with my research that I do academically. And if we follow the research with standardized testing, we will find that it does not directly relate to measurable outcomes that we're seeking necessarily. It also impacts our educators in a negative way. Most educators are not fans of standardized testing. We talk about letting our educators teach, but oftentimes a portion of their year is unnecessarily lent to teaching towards our standardized tests. I am testimony of standardized testing in the sense that I come from a household where English was not my first language. We are from an immigrant family. So to this day, and there might be people who can provide testimony to this, I am awful at sayings, American sayings and analogies, because I wasn't raised with that kind of verbiage in my household to no fault of my own. And it no doubt was indicative of how I would turn out academically or how I would excel within our education system. So I do feel that we can do better and develop better informative assessments that aren't so focused on the current standardized testing, but taking a look at a wraparound of our children in the district as a whole, and making sure that we meet where they're at so they can be more successful.
Thank you so much, Patti. I'm still not seeing any questions in the audience. Please feel free to feel like this last question. And of course, we'll make sure you all have opportunity to talk about, to wrap it up and to tell you're the best person for this job. Again, there are 2 seats. And from what the latest public records show, we have 7 people running for 2 seats. So that's a crowded primary. Even though you all don't have primaries really, still a crowded field. So, Charlotte Goya, Kurt Roars, they were not able to be here because they had prior commitments. And then Marilou Estes and Michael Flores, I never received a response from, but we want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to share Tuesday evening when the sun's on, and I have it recorded right now. We'll be able to, I just appreciate all of your activism, because 2022 is going to be an important election cycle, and this 2022 legislative session has also been very important. So I am going to go ahead and ask this last question. And again, if you want to ask a question, we still have enough time. So if you don't, because this is such a crowded field, if you don't win a seat on the CUSD governing board, how do you plan to remain involved in board business and decision-making, or just anything else involved with the Creighton, that's where I used to be on the board, the Chandler Unified School Board. So let's go ahead. Matt is no longer here, so let's go ahead and start with Crystal. And if I need to repeat it, Crystal, if you don't win a seat on the board, how do you plan to remain involved in board business and decision-making?
So, back in the fall when I was talking to folks about doing this, having been a watcher of politics in various aspects throughout my life, and really fascinated and a fairly aware person of what's kind of going on, it's still terrifying, right? And this whole process is really fascinating and interesting, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it. No matter and I joked at the time, if this was just a job that I could go interview for, oh my gosh, I would interview, yesterday, and I think that I would do really well at it. It's kind of this political process leading up. So all that to say, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. What is important is that we have people in the seats that are available, which are two, who will support our kids and our teachers and our communities and ensure that our public schools are viable. If that is not me, I will continue, going to the meetings, sending my emails, speaking out when appropriate. And you know what? 2 years from now, there's 3 seats up. And so maybe I'd give it a go again and say, hey, let me try again for these seats, because if we can get, a majority of folks who truly are public school advocates at that point in time, wouldn't that be great for our kids? My kids got a long way to go. My youngest is in 2nd grade. We're going to be here for a long time. So I don't think I'm going anywhere in terms of, my activism and support of CUSD. I love this district. I'm thankful for it. And I want to make sure that my kids and our community have good outcomes because of our schools.
Thank you so much for that, Crystal. All right, let's go ahead and same question to you, Patti.
I'm trying to see Cindy, Diane, Isa. I'm happy to say I come with receipts. I am not taking this role lightly or with any ego. I have been on the groundwork and supportive of pro-education campaigns and candidates, like some that we have present with us tonight. And I know I will continue to do so. Throughout the years, I have been attending school board meetings before COVID hit. I've been emailing our school board members prior to the ones that are currently serving on the board. I have a relationship with the superintendent that is now our formal superintendent, but I jumped on that communication with our temporary superintendent, now permanent superintendent, because public schools mean so much to me. They are our future. I met with student volunteers today, and I feel that we often overlook how involved, how informed the direct stakeholders are in these spaces, which is our students. So I look to them for leadership, and I want to do everything I can to support their way through CUSD, whether or not it's in my capacity as a school board member. But I will say that I am doing the work, and I will be elected to our school board this fall, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody else to move all of us forward.
Thank you so much. Again, public service is not an easy thing to do, especially being on your local school board. For those of you in the audience who may not know, school board members don't get paid. So the fact that you're, enlisting yourselves to do this work, we're very grateful for it. This is and should be a nonpartisan role. And because our kids don't have D's or R's after their names, right? Our kids just need to be taken care of, whether they're in a wealthy zip code or a not so wealthy zip code. So I'm grateful for all of you who were able to come out tonight and show us why you're running, why you deserve the folks in your district's vote. And so seeing that there really aren't any more questions, I'm going to allow both of you to kind of just close it up for us and tell the people who are paying attention. And again, we're posting this on Facebook. We'll have it on our YouTube channel. People can reference this material in the coming weeks and months as you lead up to your election. And I encourage both of you, please, to share your social media, your website, everything in the chat so that our members can get to know you a little bit better. 2022 has a lot of candidates and all from school board all the way to governor and all the way to Senate. So please share why folks could possibly help you out with your campaigns. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Patti start off. Tell us, why should the people of Chandler Unified School District vote for you, Patti?
Thanks, Jeannie. I said at the beginning of tonight that this is a very personal choice for me. I know I have distinct ties to our district specifically, ties that continually remind me of how much I love our district, and I choose it every day I wake my child up to go to school and spend most of his day in our public education system. I want to go back to including our schools as our community nucleuses as they were meant to be. These past few years have been more than tough on all of us between the handling of the pandemic and the continual growing attacks on public education from what happens to be our GOP-led state. Our schools have been hit hard. And I know firsthand that there exists concerted efforts to dismantle our public education system that 95% of Arizonans, just like me and those of you on this call, choose. It's frustrating and disappointing. I feel you, I see you. But I know that we have tools that we can use to protect our public schools, fight back, and do better. And one of those tools is electing pro-education candidates like me up and down the ballot this August and this fall. Going back to what Jeannie said, we will not be on the August primary ballot. We will be on your November ballot. We need to utilize these tools. We need to share the message. We need to support each other and our pro-education candidates to get us across the line. And I know that I come with the receipts, I come with the experience, I come with the involvement, and I am more than ready to serve our district.
Thank you so much. Sorry, my dogs are losing their minds right now because a car drove by. So hopefully you're not inundated with all that noise. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass it off to Crystal so you don't have to hear my dogs barking. So go ahead, Crystal, share with us why the people of Chandler Unified School District should vote for you.
So I alluded to this before. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I grew up in a rough and kind of poverty-stricken environment. I lived in Section 8 housing. I relied on the free meals that I received every single day at public school. So public schools quite literally kept me alive. They are the reason that I am who I am and where I am in my life today. And it is important for me that my children have those opportunities that are afforded to them. I believe our public schools are essential to a strong community and that those schools should be for all of the public. Patti alluded to the state legislature is doing a lot of work over these past few years to route funds to for-profit charter schools that frankly, a lot of them are profiting off directly, personally. And that's wrong. The same as the 90% of parents who send their kids to public schools here. I know the school board can only influence some of those things, but what we can do is I can use my experience to help make those hard decisions for what the board does control, spending the budget that's allocated to us, focusing on student safety, focusing on equity, and creating an environment where kids can learn and be successful in our community after graduation, no matter what their future holds, college, trade schools, and their successful careers right off the bat. I supported Red for Ed. I know we aren't teaching critical race theory in our schools, but I do believe we should teach our children complete and accurate history. I don't believe we need to ban books. All of our kids should feel safe at school. We can have reasonable discussions about curriculum and approach, but this environment is so polarized. And I think that I can work to support our community in a kind and thoughtful way by being that listening partner. We don't need to police what our teachers are doing. We need to support them and pay them a living wage. And I am a person who can be that voice. Patti alluded to, where we are from a ballot perspective. We'll be on in November. We're still collecting signatures. I need signatures so that we can be on the ballot and make those hard decisions around who are our best, most viable candidates, so that we can ensure that our public schools are supported by our school board. I mean, for heaven's sake, why would you want people on your school board who aren't even supportive of funding your public schools? That just seems silly. Thanks.
Oh, thanks. Well, you know what? I just want to say thank you so much to the candidates. Again, it is such a sacrifice to run for office, and especially at this level. And when, the dollars that are trickling into these kinds of campaigns kind of get muddied because of all the candidates who are running. So the fact that you all are so passionate about your community, about your school district, and about really the future of Arizona speaks volumes, I think, to you. So thank you for showing up today. It means a lot to our members. I'm going to go ahead and encourage both of you. I saw that Patti went ahead and shared all of her contact information. I want to make sure that Crystal has an opportunity to do the same. I'm going to go ahead and do a shameless plug for secularaz.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that relies heavily on the kindness and generosity of our donors. So please take the time not only to donate to these candidates, and again, we are not endorsing, we're just saying there should be a level playing field and an opportunity for folks to be able to share their own opinion through donations, through their time, talent, and treasure. And we encourage you to do the same for our organization. So I just appreciate this so much. You gave us an opportunity to do a trial run. We saw a couple of trolls show up. And again, that may be the reason why we need a stronger public education system that actually acknowledges things like social emotional learning and maybe some culturally diverse curriculum. So thanks, folks. I hope that you all have a wonderful Tuesday. Go Suns, because that's what I'm going to be doing after this. And thanks, everybody. secularaz.org. We'll see you the next time. Take care.